Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats, children, as well as babies, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Driveline Academy podcast. I'm your host, Devin Morgan, Director of Youth Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy. You are listening to the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. Hi, how is everybody? Back in the studio, no more broadcasting from any number of strange remote locations, or at least for today. I can't promise that next week might not be from some strange remote location, because that is the nature of my life right now, running all over God's grand creation, trying to execute the tail end of my son's junior travel ball summer. And it's a lot. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about some interesting numbers that I kind of put together and pulled to kind of put the level of commitment that he's expressed over the course of the last 8 years. And we're also just going to talk about navigating this particular thing, which is peak travel ball summer madness. I wrote a little article that I haven't published yet to kind of talk about some of the simple strategies that at least we do in my household to try to keep the kid running and having fun and being healthy. So we're going to run through that stuff. But first, longtime listeners, first-time listeners, everybody knows housekeeping, axbat.com, code DL20, get you 20% off. Axbat.com, code DL20, will get you 20% off. Axbat.com, you get it for cheaper. Use code DL20 and say what's up to the boys over at Axe for me. Beyond that, we got new training products at Driveline to talk about for youth players in the local area. And when I mean local, I mean local to Kent, Washington, local to Tampa, Florida, local to Scottsdale, Arizona. The Washington stuff is going to roll out first. Tampa and Scottsdale will roll out in succession. But what is it that's rolling out? We got some new stuff for people who want to be in the gym. It is going to be, it's a Driveline membership. That's what we're calling it, and it basically gets you access to some Driveline stuff. Gee, Devin, what is the Driveline stuff you get access to? Well, let me tell you. First thing that comes with the membership is the assessment, right? Because you know me, and you know the way that we are over here, and we're not going to try to like set off training for a kid if we don't understand what they need to work on, what they need to get good at, and how they perform currently. So the membership is basically a container for you to get recurring assessments over the course of the duration of that membership, right? And the assessment is also changing a little bit. We're leaning a lot more into the roadmap being the deliverable, so you can start to understand in much simpler terms how your athlete performs now, how they compare to like the next batch of kids, and what they need to do to get better. And we want to be able to communicate that without kind of walking you through the thing that we've done in the past, which is a pro grade report. There's a lot of reasons for kind of simplifying the deliverable here. And specifically the way that we've done it is our trainers, or the people that are doing the work with your athlete, still have access to be able to do this thing with the highest level of signal possible in terms of the stuff that they get access to on the back end, right? But the thing that's changing is that we are going to lean more into some of the simple stuff when it comes to ball flight, when it comes to video analysis, when it comes to bat speed tracking, when it comes to velocity readings, and also using our intended zones command tracking system. Because for most youth players, there's a lot of leverage to just lean into those things rather than lean into something like biomechanics. Why is that? Well, consider the athlete, right? If we're really talking about 14 and down kids, and that's who this thing is aimed at, those kids from a physiological standpoint or a biological standpoint, I'm not even sure in this framing what's the right word, so you can just pick one that sounds better and I'll pretend that I use the right one. From a physiological standpoint, because I'm pretty sure that's the right one, there's so much instability that if the way that you're engaging with this stuff is like you're going to come in one time and then you're going to do it again in maybe 8 to 12 weeks, or you're going to do it in 6 months, you can still extract a ton of value just leaning into some of the simple signal and letting the physiological stuff kind of take shape on its own. Now, we want that shape to be defined by the way that we train, so the drills and the constraints, et cetera, et cetera. That stuff doesn't go away, right? All we're doing is kind of simplifying the entry point by leaning more into some of the simple deliverable for this type of membership product. So we're going to run that assessment. You're going to have a meeting, a sit down in front of a person meeting with a trainer to kind of talk about the result of that assessment and then figure out which path you want to go down. And one of the paths with the membership is just continuing to do more group training. And we firmly believe in the value of group training. Our college guys do it. Our pro guys do it. So you better believe that we believe in the fidelity of that environment for your 14, 13, 12, 11, 10-year-old child. Like, that's absolutely a thing that we believe in. So you get access to group training. And if you want one-on-one sessions, which we are currently not calling lessons, because it's not a lesson, because I don't want it to be a lesson. I don't want it to revolve around that word. Instead, what I want it to be is I want it to be developing hitters and developing pitchers, because that's the job. So those one-on-one hitter development or pitcher development sessions also are a thing that you get access to with the membership. It's intentionally lower cost than anything we've typically done in this space before. We're changing a little bit of it, and again, leaning into things like ball flight, things like bat speed, things like the jump testing, because again, that's still a part of it. And it's really aimed at the local kids where, like, if you want to come in once a week, great. If you want to come in and do work remotely and you want to assess every or let's call it like maybe 8 to 12 weeks or 6 to 8, I don't know, whatever works for you, that's fine. Or if you just want to do a bunch of one-on-ones, that's a thing that we are now structurally able to provide, and it all starts with the membership. So you, dearest podcast listener, thank you for being here. As per usual, are getting access to this information before anybody else does. We haven't done any paid ad reads for it. I haven't put anything out on social media, so it's you guys that are getting to hear about this thing first. And if you're interested, what I would do is holler at our support line, support@drivelinebaseball.com, or give us a holler at 523. I almost screwed up the phone number, 425-523-4030, and get on a wait list. These things are going to be live in Washington on August 3rd, so it's coming up fast. So if you're looking to start your membership at the end of your competitive season, start with that assessment to kind of figure out where you are at the end of the year, and then start with like a good idea of what you need to work on in this offseason. Great time for it. Support@drivelinebaseball.com. Tell him Devin sent you about the Driveline membership, and they will be able to take care of you. So that's a new thing. Trying to, again, make what we do here at Driveline, make it more accessible to more people, because, man, I get it. You know, like, if you're a kid in the local area and you are happy with your current team and you're happy with your current coach, the idea that, like, the only way that you get access to, like, some of the things that Driveline can do is by joining our teams. Well, like, man, you're happy with your team, and that should be fine. You're happy with the coach that you got, that's fine. You're happy with this community that you have. And I think as a parent, that's something that is worth its weight in gold in youth baseball. So for those type of kids who are in that type of situation where you want to do some Driveline stuff, you want to be coached, you want to have access to the gym, but you don't want to leave your current team, hey, man, I finally got a thing for you. So holler at our support folks, support@drivelinebaseball.com. or 425-523-4030. Get on that wait list. We're launching live in Washington August 3rd. Florida and Arizona will be coming shortly thereafter. And I don't know, man. Like, I think we finally got something that's good for local players to come into the gym. I hope you come in and check it out. So yeah, that's a thing. We got new stuff. In putting together a presentation for the company, the men and women that work at Driveline, about what we're doing with these new local youth training products, I pulled some numbers that are a little rough, but like should be directionally accurate, that represent, I think, the customer that these training products are not aimed at. They're not aimed at me. And I'm going to put that into a little bit of context. Since 2018, since my son was 8 years old, we've been here. Started just as a customer, Longtime listeners know that like shortly thereafter, I ended up getting a job at Driveline and recently celebrated, um, boy, is that my 9-year anniversary? Yeah, 8-year anniversary, I believe. I don't know. Yeah, 9. No, 8. Um, 8 years I've been here as an employee, but tack another 6, 7 months onto that, and that's when I started at Driveline truly as a customer. And since that period of time, I won't be shy about the fact that like my son has enjoyed a transformative experience through the way that he's engaged with Driveline over a long period of time. And if I just say to you that that long period of time required a substantial amount of commitment, that's like 3 words. And I don't think it really encapsulates like what it's taken to get here and the level of consistency that it's taken for my son to get to where he is. So I pulled some numbers. I throw it old, my good artificial intelligence friend Claude, to try to like wrap this up and like, okay, how do I start to understand like what exactly is this commitment that we've expressed? Because I know it's a lot. I know it's insane, but I wasn't really sure exactly how insane it was, and now I have some information that I will share with you all. The distance covered driving just for my son to train. This is not me coming down here to work. This is simply for his training days. Over the course of this 8-ish year period of time, 37,000 miles. So, yeah, that's a lot. Do you know how much time I've spent in the car? And note, this doesn't include driving to games. This is just for training. Just for training during a limited duration of the off season. And certainly 13s, 14s, coming down here a little bit more frequently because that's how we run our 13, 14 U teams. Do you know how much time I've spent in the car? 1,150 hours simply getting my kid from where we live to where Driveline is. And we don't live close, right? Like we don't. I've told this story before. I'll probably tell it again. In 2018, when Danny was, 8 years old, about to turn 9, when we first started to come down here to Driveline, what is that? Is that like a third or fourth grade teacher? I don't remember. I came to her and I was like, hey, Danny has an opportunity to go do this baseball thing, like, 2 to 3 days a week. But it's down in Kent and we would need to pull him out of school a little bit early. Do you think that would be okay? We needed to pull him like 15 minutes early so we could beat traffic and get down here when the session started. And she was great. And she was like, oh yeah, we don't do anything for the last 15 minutes of school anyway, so it's fine. That afforded us the opportunity over the course of this 8 years to spend 1,150 hours in the car driving from where we live to Driveline. Can I put that into better context for you? Let's try this. That's 6 months continuous of a 40-hour a week job. Just in the car, half a year. Can I put that distance into context? 37,000 miles. You know what that is? That's approximately 1.5 times around the Earth. Or it is 6 to 7 round trip drives across the United States. Or, and this one is my favorite, 37,000 miles. You know what that is? That's about 16% of the way to the moon. And that's the distance that we have driven getting from where we live and coming down to Driveline over 8 years. And being, well, I guess 8.5 years at this point, and being very, very consistent through that period of time. And, over this course of this last month or so, baseball has taken us all over the country. We, again, like longtime listeners know that like I didn't do that thing when Danny was like 13 or 14 years old to try to put him on like a national level team. Like we didn't do that. I think we did 14U NTIS or 13U NTIS, and like, made it a couple rounds, didn't go farther than that. We've just stayed focusing on like what I suppose I perceive to be the highest leverage for him. And that was just continuing to get better and really kind of leaning more into the skill side and not spending a lot of time worrying about, the difference in kind of like the level of competitiveness of the opponent, because it was largely immaterial to the thing that mattered more, which is like actual skill development, like at an individual level. We didn't do a bunch of showcases. You can rewind, I don't know how many episodes back, but you could rewind into, the one-on-one I talked about, like the first PG showcase we went to back in December. And now here we are in July, and, we're doing the thing. Danny has effectively graduated out of our academy team program and onto another program in a local area. He's playing with a national team that is playing some national level events, and then he's also playing with that same cohort of kids in the small amount of local stuff that we're doing, but it's all in kind of conjunction under the same umbrella. And I can talk briefly about kind of the reasons for why that is. I don't really want to go into a lot of it on the personal side of him, because look, I think at the end of the day, the simplest way to kind of frame this is that I feel strongly that whether I am the director of youth baseball at Driveline or not, the title that matters more in like the grand scheme of things is two things. I am a husband to my wife, and I am a father to my children. And those things exist on a layer that is above my professional commitments. And hopefully I don't have to explain that. And because of that structure, I think the reality is that we've reached a point where Danny had a thirst to play with a more competitive cohort of kids that are focused and driven to the way and to the kind of the same end goal as he was. And the reality is that that was a little bit of a mismatch for kind of what we have with the academy. And I think the reasons for that are fairly easy to understand. And I've talked about this before, but I'll kind of regurgitate. The reason for that is because we're not going out of our way to only take kids into our program that are like the highest performing kids at present. And you should sit with that idea for a little bit to kind of understand what we're trying to do with teams. And maybe I've never done a good enough job of like explaining that thing. And I certainly always wanted and still want our teams to be as competitive as possible. Like I will go to my grave saying that if we're going to go to the trouble of putting on a cap and a belt, we should probably try to just go ahead and win. Like, why wouldn't you? But the tricky thing to understand is that winning and competitiveness at darn near every stage of baseball, and certainly I think this gets magnified at the youth levels, and it definitely gets magnified at the smaller field sizes. I'll tell you the path to win the most. It's really easy. Try to self-select as much as possible for the kids who are physiological outliers, the kids who grow earliest, because they give you a level of athletic advantage that is hard to overcome without a great amount of skill. 2, focus more on, I guess there's a third layer now that I'm thinking about it. Like 2, focus more on always having training and intention revolve around outcome, not output. And don't worry so much about pairing those two things. And then the third layer of how to field the most competitive youth baseball team is you certainly have to take advantage of any potential leverage that there is in game situations. if you got to bunt 4, 5, 6 times in a row against a youth baseball team that doesn't really have a good idea of like what they should be doing on first and thirds, what they should be doing about bunt coverage in general, well, that's just a simple strategy, right? If you liberally give out take signs in plus counts, you're kind of just like playing a leverage game to suggest that like the kid on the bump is more likely to throw a ball than your kid is to be able to successfully find a barrel. So you're going to get more base runners. And then again, you're talking about extracting the maximum amount of leverage as possible. So you want to take advantage of the fact that like, kids pick moves as pitchers are not particularly good. Catchers are not good enough at controlling the running game. So a walk, again, is a triple, as we've discussed ad nauseum, and have really beaten that into horse glue, to bring up an old phrase. That's the strategy. That's what you do. And if you do those 3 things well, hunt for physiological outliers, ignore pairing outcomes with output and simply focus on output derived training and kind of the export of what you're working on from a practice standpoint, and then just be as scummy as possible about obtaining every incremental amount of leverage that you can from a gameplay standpoint. That's the way to win. My academy teams don't revolve around any one of those 3 things at all. So consequently, we land in a place where like our competitiveness is typically not what it otherwise could be if we ran that playbook. Now, interestingly, we're starting to see that invert over a longer period of time as we like hold these cohorts together. And I want to give a huge shout out to Alex Cochran, who's one of the coaches in my program and also works with me in academy, and Dan Comstock, same deal. Dan and Alex coach for our program. They work at Driveline. And because they've done a great job of retaining families and kind of working them through these experiences, we're starting to see that worm turn, right? Like, we're starting to see the long tail effect of what happens when you apply this approach to basically compounding interest on skill development, and then at an age appropriate level, start to layer in these things about like, let's make sure we're playing good baseball. And that is kind of what we've chosen, right? We've chosen to put the athletic engine development, the outcome plus output development stuff as a primary focus. We're doing the refined gameplay approach secondary. Now, I could probably flap my gums at you for probably a solid 45 minutes about the reason for that, but that is the choice that we've made. And at the end of the day, it does present us with this thing to consider when you have a kid who their competitive level is kind of like outpaced their peers a touch, and they have a thirst for like the next level of thing. And to a degree, some of that isn't even about the team container that they're in. Some of that is just about like the market, right? It's about what you can get. And if there was one thing I would want a parent in youth baseball to understand who's got like I don't know, like a 13 to 14-year-old kid, and you're considering, do I need to have my kid do the like national level events? Do I need to have them like go showcase? Do I need to have them do all that stuff? It's like, if there's one thing I would want that parent to understand is like, you're going to know when you get to that point, and I don't think you need to rush it. And the reason that I say that is, in the Pacific Northwest, we have, I'm sure, a travel ball circuit that's or travel or summer ball, or however you want to phrase it, it's club ball. We have a circuit between tournaments and league that is probably similar to a lot of places where you see a lot of the same faces and a lot of the same programs and a lot of the same kids. Some of those kids, and I'm not just talking about my son, I'm not talking about my program, I'm talking about some of those kids, have both a thirst and a desire, and I would probably go so far as to say a need to go see something that's a little bit different than what they get regionally. And I think we came to that point with my son. Like we just did. And that point defined pretty clearly is, yeah, he wants to play college baseball, but he has an eye toward the other thing. And he wanted to be with kids who take it as serious as he does and who have that same type of commitment level and goal structure. Um, and that's not to say that anybody who has a different posture presentation about their goals and their commitment level, that they're wrong, right? Everybody has their own path to decide what's appropriate for them and the level that they want to commit to this thing. I don't know if your kid wants to spend 37,000 hours or 37,000 miles in the car. I don't know if you want to spend 1,150 hours in the car. I don't know if you want to travel 16% of the way to the moon to serve what's a very simple need, which is helping your kid get better at baseball. I don't know. My kid did, though. Not because of me, because of him. This is intrinsically motivated. And we came to a point where like that was something that he desired. So we kind of, I have to serve him. I have to serve my primary function: husband, father, Driveline employee, director of academy. That's the order. So I had to serve the other thing. So we went out and did that thing. So, I talked from the PG UBC, the Ultimate Baseball Championship, I believe is what that acronym is for. A few weeks ago, talking about my good brother, Rob Hani, who unfortunately passed away. If you haven't listened to that episode, I would strongly suggest that you take like the 25 or 27 minutes to do so, because you need to know the name Rob Hani. You need to understand the legacy that the guy has left, and you need to understand the commitment and the degree to which he started some of this process to make the game better, that myself and some of the other members of our ABCA Youth Baseball Committee and the coalition that we built are going to continue to push. Anyways, I digress. Went down to the PG UBC with this national level team and won it. And won it in an environment where every game has, 4 to 6 to 8 pro scouts and probably double that amount of college scouts in attendance. And it's funny, my wife and I were talking about the dead period with Division I recruiting. And she asked me a very, very simple but insightful question. And she was like, well, what's the point of that if like the coaches are still there watching? They just can't talk to the kids? Like, yeah. Well, aren't the kids going to get stressed out because the coaches are there anyways? And it was like, they could, yes. So, navigated that environment, and it was a success, hit really well all week, did a pretty darn great job behind the dish, and ended up pitching 3 innings of no-hit ball in the championship against a Kansas City Royal Scout team to get the dub. Pretty hilarious how that all came to be. The reason that Danny ended up on this team is because he is a catcher. And that was kind of the primary role that he filled. I think they probably knew that he pitched and that he knew that he could play some other positions, but like catching was kind of the thing. So you get into this championship and it's the end of, one of these deals. And as per usual, everybody's running out of arms. And, from what I understand, the coach is, in the dugout, hey, who can pitch? And my kid goes, I can go. And he goes, well, did you start in high school? And he goes, yeah. He goes, can you throw strikes? He goes, yeah. Well, how hard do you throw? What have you run it up to? And run it up to 91. And the coach is like, what? How do I not know this? So he throws a little bit of a quick warm-up pen to show him that he can go. Ends up on the bump and gets the 9-1-2 hitter in the 5th, clinging to a 1-run lead, and puts them down, I believe, in order. Gets the 3-4-5 hitter in the 6th, and 2 of those kids had already hit solo tanks earlier in the game, and like those kids can bang. And got through that successfully. And and then I believe in the seventh, hit hit the first guy, I think, on like a first pitch slider that just literally just like tumbled off the finger and hit him at like 45 miles an hour. And then got through the seventh. And I believe we did scratch across a run, so we ended up closing it out with a 2-run lead. But did the thing, man. And then that same, basically that same cohort, he's played in some different local events where, again, there is a high concentration of college scouts and some pro scouts. And it's done generally pretty well. I also wouldn't say that it's been perfect in all aspects, which is kind of perfect. It never ceases to be reinforced for me as a parent watching my son go through this experience, like how hard the game really is and how hard it can be when you're up against the edges of like your competitiveness. So, for example, as a 17-year-old kid playing in a WCL, a college summer league event in a stadium with fans where they're like selling hot dogs and burgers and they're selling beer, it might not go perfect. And that's a great thing because you aren't protected from it appropriately. You are instead exposed. You're exposed to the risk and to the consequence of what it looks like to not perform, because that's just how the game works, man. Like, it's always going to be that way. Always. And I don't know, man. I think it's probably true that like part of my reluctance when he was 13, 14 to 15 to like put him on some big like national traveling team is that I wasn't sure if he would have been ready for that at that stage. Because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to not perform, and then kind of like that existential question is like, is this for me? And that's not the question, right? That's clearly not the question. The question is like, what are you going to do to get closer to the best version of who you can be within this game? And that question gets asked constantly, over and over and over and over the course of a week, over the course of a month, over the course of a season. You're constantly being asked that question if you're competing at a high enough level. And if you are successful, then the answer is like, gosh darn it, yes. And that's awesome, and it feels great. And then sometimes you will ask that question, or the game will ask that question of you, and the answer will be no. And then you get confronted with that same question. What are you going to do about it? How good do you want to be? It's your choice. And certainly the thing that, I was orienting away from when he was younger is that I didn't want that question to be asked. I didn't want him to be confronted with that question in a period of time where he didn't have the maturity to give an honest assessment of that answer. I think there's two ways that you can answer that question. One is that you answer that question almost the same way that you would if you just like put your hand on the stove and got burned. If you ask me that question immediately after my hand got burned, and I'm like a child, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm putting like a frozen pizza in the oven. There's 3 people on this planet that understand this reference that I'm about to make. So, hi, I love you guys. So you're a kid and you're putting a pizza in the oven, and the oven got preheated to 425, and somehow in the course of taking this frozen pizza and putting it on the rack in this oven, you made contact between flesh and 425-degree rack, and you got burned. And you're like, man, that hurt. That hurt, and now I'm rattled. And now I'm like feeling like I got to grab like a pair of tongs and like put the pizza in so that there's a barrier between me and the fire and the flame and the thing that hurt me, right? I'm rattled. I'm scared, and I don't want to touch it. If that happens to me as an adult, right? I grab the Costco pizzas, the mushroom and truffle ones that my wife are huge fans of right now. Costco, if you're listening, please bring those back. And I put that frozen pizza in the oven and I'd make contact with that 425-degree rack. I'm going to be like, damn it, that hurt. My bad. It's not going to change anything about the way that I'm going to interact with this device, right? This the oven that is in my home. As a child, hey man, you might just go like, I'm just a microwave guy now, right? The point of this extended analogy about frozen pizza and the consequence of not being mindful about heat in the oven is that I think when you put kids in that configuration and they don't have the emotional or however type of way that you want to frame maturity, they're more likely to be scared and they're more likely to retract and they're more likely to grab the tongs or they're more likely to turn into a microwave guy. And I didn't want my kid to be a microwave guy. I wanted him to be able to make his own judgment of his own decision about what's appropriate for him and what he wanted to do. So we have a game up against a WCL team and like it was a tough day in the box. It was a tough day. Lots of context around that. And there's a whole conversation to be had that we're going to lean into about like how you get through this just like nonstop gameplay phase. It's hard. It's hard and it's challenging. And I don't know, man, quite frankly, I think it's fair to say that I possibly, got my son about as dangerously close to being overworked as I've ever been this summer. And it's my fault. I am still his parent. I am still the one who is largely in charge of like where you're going to play and who you're going to play for and how frequently you're going to play. And, we jumped in this thing with both feet and it was just like, hey man, like, I don't know, like commitment's a pretty big deal in my house. So if we were going to commit, man, we're going to commit. We're going to try to play all these games. We're going to try to make the schedule work. And like, we got into it. It was like, man, we're a little fried and it's affected in competitiveness. So, I'll talk about that in a second. But the point being is that I think sometimes when you decide to compete at a higher level, you have to kind of be reminded that like higher level consequences are going to come with it. But really at the end of the day, the thing that matters most is the most simple question is like, is this in your heart? Is this still a thing that you were compelled from a place of love to go do? And this summer, like that got challenged for my son. And it's been such a good thing to have that happen. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it's a good thing. I promise you that. So yeah, man, like we're working through that stuff. He had a all-state thing last week. We have the PBR all-state next week. So we're just like finally just doing like a little mini deload rest session to get ready for that and hopefully have that go well. But it's been a grind, man. It has been a grind. So like this idea of like the, 37,000 miles and 1,150 hours of commitment, over the last 8 years, the shape of the last month and a half of my life is that same. It's the same thing directionally, just in a smaller duration of time. We've probably spent more nights in hotels than I have been sleeping in my own bed. Well, I forgot to tell you guys, I think my dog might have blown a UCL or an ACL or something. Not a UCL, an ACL. My dog doesn't throw pitches. But he did screw up his legs. We added another 6 hours drive from Portland back to my house to back to Portland for one of these events. Like, it's been a lot. It has been a lot. But I will say this, in so much as it matters, that this is probably the last summer that like, myself and my son and my wife and my daughter are going to be able to kind of like share this experience because shoot, man, next summer, if he's committed to a college, they might not want him to play summer ball. They might want him to just do like prep work to get ready for the fall. That's a thing. I don't know how that's going to go. This might be the last one, but I really feel like, we've done a pretty darn good job of, like, going through this experience and accepting the highs and the lows, man. Like, the highs and the lows, um, last last Sunday, we drove again, woke up at 4:30 to drive down to Portland, to get there for a 9 a.m. start for a 10 o'clock game. And kid played in 2 games, didn't actually get behind the dish, was out in the field playing a little infield, which is fine. And ended the game and ended kind of that weekend and probably like the last like big competitive thing he'll have this summer with like a beautiful picture perfect, like 20 to 22 degree launch angle, right center oppo liner. Great ball flight, hit it hard, hit it far, one hop the fence, at Portland University. Like, really just ended on a strong note. So ideally we'll go into this PBR thing next week and have some fun, and then transition towards our off-season plan, and figuring out kind of what our goals are for the off-season. But while we're going through this, I just want to run through some of the stuff that I think we've done that is, it's been impactful for like navigating the ferocity of this schedule. And at the time that I wrote this, D had played 9 games over the last 7 days, and 19 games over the last 30. It's been a lot. And again, I think the thing that's pertinent here is that, like, my son, both, catcher is his primary position, but he also pitches. And those 2 things, man, like the workload is insane. And typically the way that I would approach this is start talking about pulse, but I don't want to talk about pulse. What I want to talk about instead is like some of the simple and largely no cost things that we've done to try to make sure that he stays healthy and is recovered as much as possible through this phase of things. And the first thing is just like sleep. I know that this is a tricky thing to navigate for parents, and especially with teenagers. If you're a younger kid, well, like, your younger kid, probably just don't play this much. Like, this is just too much. But where we are right now with my son is he's in his junior summer, going into his senior year. We're talking to some junior colleges. Some mid-major Division Ones have reached out. So, like, I don't know. We're going to get to August 1st in a couple, like 8 days here. I don't know how it's going to go. We'll find out. But it's been a lot. So, just travel, living in hotels, late nights, early mornings. What we try to do is attack this thing with some structure. So I think the first thing is like knowing what you're looking for, which is, 8 to 9 hours a night is for sure the target. We will basically figure out, like, okay, what's our arrival time? How much time do we need to, like, get ready, get some breakfast before that, and then work backwards. Like, all right, well, how do we get AR 8 to 9? I'm a fairly firm believer that, this generation of kids who, they just get to they sleep like crap. They get to the field, they'll rip a bang, and then just start with their workout and their warm up. I think we're going to have a generation of kids whose endocrine systems are just absolutely cooked. And I don't want my kid to be one of them. So he doesn't do that. We don't do energy drinks for him in our house. We don't do coffee. He'll do a chai, but like, I don't know that really even counts. So instead, what we try to do is, hey man, we're looking for 8 to 9 hours of sleep. We'll help some of that supplementation, with supplementation with ZMAs. And we also try to make sure that we're not doing a bunch of sugar right before bedtime. So that's kind of the combo, is a target of 8 to 9 hours, from a supplement standpoint, ZMAs, so zinc, magnesium, and basically aspartame is vitamin B6. That's what the A comes from, I believe. And that combination has definitively been linked in research to increase sleep quality, which leads to increased muscle quality and certainly some amount of growth. So I'd really try to hammer them on the ZMAs to make sure that that's good. And we're also doing naps, man. Like, there was a game where we had a 7:45 arrival, He had a timed sprint between 7:45 and then the game at 9 o'clock, and then a game that was going to be later on the day. Um, I'm sorry, we just had the one game at 9. So we get back to the hotel around like 12:30, and he slept from 1 to 3:45. That's a long nap in the middle of the day, but a needed nap, I think, relative to the level of activity and the need for recovery. And kind of the way to think about this is like most of the stuff that's happening from like a tissue recovery standpoint is going to happen within the first 90 to 120 minutes of sleep. So I let him go a little bit longer than that, right? So like 2 hours and 45 minutes to get him a little bit of extra cushion there. But then critically, once he woke up at 2:45, hey man, we got to get outside. We got to get some sunlight in you because we have to reset all these physiological systems that are going to send his body the signal it needs for him to actually get back to sleep when it's time to sleep in the evening. So nothing wrong with a long nap, but you probably still want to target on the back end like 6-ish hours of awake time before you need to get to sleep. So that was what we targeted. Nutrition is a huge part of this. And again, it's also a challenge because of the constant travel. You're up and down the freeways. I mean, I don't know if you guys are traveling like the way that I am, but like trying to make healthy choices all the time can be challenging. So we'll bring a cooler. We'll throw some stuff in there if we need to, and then we're just trying to generally make a better choice. So like if confronted with the choice between like McDonald's and Chipotle, I'm generally gonna kind of like lean towards the Chipotle. I'm gonna lean to like a teriyaki or something like that. But I also don't think you need to be perfect. Or at least that's not what we're trying to do. At a certain point, this is just like a calories in, calories out game. And again, relative to the volume of activity, I know that the caloric need is high. So, like at a certain point, if he wants to like just crush like a bag of goldfish crackers and we make sure that we get enough water to take it, do something to mitigate the crazy amount of salt he's just taken in, like, sure. It's fine. Because again, at a certain point, calories in, calories out. Strength training is a tough one, man. And, I think if you've listened to this podcast for any duration of time, you know what I feel about like how necessary consistency is for strength training for kids. If they really want to get anywhere close to like their athletic ceiling and also be strong and healthy and resilient and all those things. But it's hard trying to fit in lifting with this volume of game activity. So I think that the biggest thing is kind of approach it from like a mindset stance to like, look, I'm aware that in a perfect world, the best configuration of this would be to not play so many games in the summertime, be able to be a little bit more consistent on the strength stuff so that like those gains can keep happening. Again, I realize that I am potentially the architect of my own destruction here, right? I have signed my son up for all this stuff, or I did, because, that was the craziness we were going through at this time. We're not really there anymore. But from that standpoint, instead of kind of thinking about like, hey, I need to make sure that I'm still gaining strength during the season, it's really just about like maintaining it. And I will put this in perfectly stark terms. We had a tournament that led directly into like a 3-day showcase event. So Danny ended up catching 16 innings, 15 innings as a catcher. It might have been 21. No, it was like 20 plus innings. And then another 7 on the first day of the showcase event. And it was like, okay, next day, I need you to tell them that you need to DH. His arm was fine. His arm was hanging a little bit just because of the volume of throwing, even if there isn't a lot of like high intent throwing. But again, you have throwdowns every inning. Have some runners that are going to run on you, or they're going to try to until they realize you throw 90. So what we did was like, hey, on that second day of the showcase event, I just had him DH. Now, could you make the argument that, like, would it have been beneficial for some of the coaches there to see him catching, like, and maybe, like, sure, I don't disagree that that might have been beneficial, but the thing I'm trying to worry about at that point is not like making sure that, like, I harness every single opportunity for every single coach to see all the thing that my kid does as a pitcher slash catcher. And some of this is relative to that specific circumstance. It was about, all right, if you're looking, you can tell that, like, my kid's pretty good behind the dish. Perfect? No. Stuff that he needs to work on? Yes. But, like, is he pretty good back there? Yes. So what matters more? Does it matter more that I have him DH this day so he can set up ideally for a good pitching performance on the following day? Or do I need to, like, I need to drink from the fire hose and take advantage of every single opportunity? And the answer is simply no, which is the next thing we're going to get into. But, like, in this specific sense, we were just like, no, we're not going to do that. We are going to moderate a little bit on the workload side. We're going to try to find a way to lift once a week. We're going to make sure that the sleep and the nutrition are dialed. We're going to try to maintain strength and get through this thing and not get worse. So then Wednesday comes. He ends up throwing 2 innings. He threw the 7th and the 8th in this game. 5 punchies, 1 hit 90. Off of a previous high of 91. And I don't know if that was, I don't know. I don't know if it was a stalker, pocket radar, whatever. Point being that, like, through 91 in December as like a PR and has consistently been able to hold that number over the course of the year while playing this insane schedule, which is a flippin' win. That is a win all day long. And again, part of this commitment, specifically in this phase, to sleep, nutrition, not losing strength, is part of the path to getting there. But the last one was just like, sometimes, man, you just got to say no. And I alluded to this earlier when we talked about, like, the WCL thing. Anyways, we went up and played this game against the Bellingham Bells. Didn't have a great day. And our coach actually reached out to Danny and was like, hey, do you want to take a rest? Looks like you're wearing it a little bit. And number one, I need to be very, very clear about how much you just got to appreciate good coaching. You have to appreciate guys who have feel and are watching their kids and can kind of see this stuff. Because as a parent, yeah, I can see that my kid is fried. Yeah, I can see that he's really on the brink of being overworked. And I'm doing all this math in the back of my head about, like, oh, what happens if he gets hurt? And what are the stories? Oh, it's Devin's kid. It's the Driveline one, and he overworked him. Like, believe me, I understand all of that. But in this configuration, he's not on a team that I control anymore. I'm a dad over there, man. Like, I go to the field and I don't wear any of my Driveline stuff. I'm typically just like grab one of my random wrestling shirts. Shout out to El Grande Americano. I just, I'm low key. I don't, because it's not about me. This is my kid's experience. This is his time. In 2 years from now, when he's playing college baseball, sure, man, I'll put all my Driveline stuff back on when I go to the field, but I'm not doing that right now. So to be able to feel confident that he is still being coached by coaches that have this awareness for his health and his mind state is worth its weight in flippin' gold. So, Nick, thank you. So yeah, we took a day off, and we said no. I mean, we didn't really say no. It was offered to us. But the point that I'm making is, again, kind of like the same thing about, like, hey, my son's in the Pac Northwest games. It's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Monday's game just came on the back of like a 3 or 4 day event previous. So Tuesday, I need you to tell your coach and see if you can DH, because I just don't think we need to pursue every single opportunity. We have to stack rank these things. And yes, would it have been great for him to be able to catch on Monday and Tuesday at Pac Northwest and pitch on Wednesday? Sure, great. But, like, what if we do that and he goes out and pitches on Wednesday and he's like 84, 85? what signal does that send to the college coaches who are now watching that? And was the benefit of having him catch another 7 innings or 4 innings or 5 innings on Tuesday worth the cost? Clearly, the answer is no. But in the moment, I understand that, like, any parent, me included, is like trying to figure out what's the path. And all I can tell you is like, man, I think sometimes you can say no. Or sometimes, if you got a great coach who's got some feel and they're capable of like seeing how things are going, and hey, do you need a day off? Man, like those guys and those girls are worth their weight in flipping gold. So, at the end of the day, man, that's some of the stuff that we've done. Right now, I think what we are doing is we are trying to carve the path forward. And like I said, there's some great junior colleges that we've talked to. There's some mid-major, division ones that are, I don't know. I mean, we've had some minor conversations. Like, I don't know how this thing is going to go. And the reality is that, like, hey man, rose-colored glasses. But if I take those off, look, I understand what it is. My kid is a lot like a lot of other kids who are less than 6 feet tall, less than 195 pounds, and they're like around 17 years old. And they're good baseball players. But at onset, they might lack some of the physical characteristics of kids who are getting some of these D1 Power 4 opportunities. So my kid isn't there yet. I also think that my kid is a heck of a ball player. So he's trying to do the things that he needs to do to kind of stand out and separate himself from the pack. And like, man, I don't envy the job of college coaches or guys who are going through recruiting, man. Like, Pac Northwest games, I don't know, probably 400 or 500 kids, maybe more. I mean, I might be wildly under on that, but a decent chunk of those kids are all going to be kind of in that same box from a physical characteristic standpoint so you want to be able to stand out on skill. So, Danny was able to still hit 90, throw strikes, and punch guys out. Good. That stuff stands out. They did a time 60, ran a 6.67, was the number 2 fastest kid of all the 2027s. And that's after, like, baseball 8 of the 9 days prior to having to run that 60 and not really getting a chance to really warm up because he was a catcher and he was warming up his pitcher. Didn't even do a dynamic before he had to do his sprint work. So still getting a 6.7, again, that's good. We're standing out. And he hit okay. We're working some stuff out there, but like, that's the thing. At the end of the day, I was listening to a parent talk in the stands, and he said something really insightful. He goes, my kid's just going to be as good as he can be. And as a Driveline guy, I approach this thing from like structure and development expectations. I'm doing the math like, all right, well, if Danny is still holding 90, 91 by the time we get into August, then we're going to go through this development phase. And by the time we get into February, we'll be able to shut down, we'll be able to build back up, we'll be able to do a velo phase. And like, maybe 92 to 94, maybe a 5 is in play, depending on how big and strong he gets. Doing the same thing on the hitting side. But to hear another parent go, he's going to be as good as he can be, I had to accept that. I had to take that in. And I will say that, like, this insanity of the gameplay phase over the last, 6 weeks has been a lot. But I really think we've gotten a pretty cool experience coming out of it. Cause like, man, it's not about to get through that. And again, think about what this means now versus what an actual college baseball schedule looks like, or what someday a professional schedule would look like, and understand that those guys at that level are already going through this thing. And it gives you some clarity about why coaches are interested in watching what their players do that they're evaluating when they fail. because the failure is inevitable. It comes for everybody. Mike Trout went like over on the night that the Angels went and scouted him. The story goes that Kyle Schwarber, when he was scouted as a draftee, was on like an 0 for 18 slide. My kid had like an 0 for 5. As a 17-year-old, playing against kids already playing college baseball, like, all right, fine. Schwarber was a college baseball player going 0 for 18, being evaluated by professional scouts. Because at a certain point, when you understand that like this type of failure is going to come for everybody, then it's like, man, it's not about going 4 for 4 on any given day. And it's not about being perfect on the mound. It's just like, and I think this represents all this stuff, right? The decisions about sleep, the decisions about nutrition, the decisions about stress, about rest, the decision about saying no. All of this kind of comes down to like, you're trying to do the stuff to prepare you to perform as best as possible. And at the end of the day, if you do that, that's how you honor yourself. That's how you honor the goal. Is you prep as best as possible, you try to compete as best as possible, and the rest, it's up in the ether, man. It's up in the ether, and you just get to decide whether at the end of this experience, whenever that experience ends, if you're going to be satisfied with the choices that you made and the outcomes that came. And at the end of the day, that is the only thing that I want for my kid. I want him to have this experience shape him and have him learn about himself and what he is capable of. And he can get to that deliverable. He can get to that deliverable now. He could tell me on August 1st that he wants to be done playing baseball, and he'd feel pretty confident that like we had gotten there. If he wants to keep pushing, then we'll keep pushing and we'll see. But I think that's how you honor yourself. And I think there's a lot of value there. Time to stop. Otherwise, you're going to get more deep dad thoughts, and everybody knows that stuff doesn't play. So anyways, memberships at Driveline. Memberships, assessments, lessons, group training, whole kit and caboodle. It's a thing. It's launching in August 3rd in Washington, Arizona, and Florida shortly thereafter. If you want to get on the wait list, tell them that Devin sent you. Go to support@drivelinebaseball.com or like email those guys. We all remember what emails, right? Like I'm not the only one who still emails occasionally. Support@drivelinebaseball.com, 425-523-4030. Tell them Devin sent you. Tell them you want to get on the wait list for memberships at Driveline for players 14 and under. High school kids, if you want to get on the wait list, let us know because we might do that. We'll see. I think you can make the case that it should be a thing that we're to do. But right now, players 9 through 14, memberships at Driveline, support@drivelinebaseball.com, 425-523-4030. Tell them Devin sent you. Ask to get on the wait list. That's a thing. That's all I got for you. Probably the last time that you're going to hear from me before I take a little bit of PTO, so we'll probably be back in early August. Shout out to everybody else that's going through this thing with their kids, man. It is a challenging and beautiful thing to watch. And I am trying to soak up every second of it that I can because I know it's going to be ending in this form of it is going to end pretty soon. So that's where my head's at. Hope you guys are well, man. It's good to see you. My name is Devin. I'm down by law. I'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.